South Africa made their opening statements as to why they believe Israel is guilty of genocide in Gaza. Iran seized an oil tanker in the Gulf of Oman, and 2 journalists that were killed in Gaza last week, Israel now says were both members of a Palestinian militant organization. What's going on, everyone? Let's take a look at some updates as it relates to the ongoing war between Israel and Hamas. I'm recording this at 10 a.m. Central on Thursday, January 11th, 2024. So the big news over the past 24 hours was the start of the hearings at the International Court of Justice, where South Africa has accused Israel of committing genocide. The way this is going to look is that today, Thursday, South Africa made their opening comments. Tomorrow, on Friday, Israel will respond. And then the court is expected to make a ruling later this month as to whether or not they're going to move forward with formal proceedings. So the focus in these opening statements, as to be expected, was South Africa really dialing in on the intent piece, showing that Israel has the intent to commit genocide. As we've talked about before, that tends to be the hang-up in a lot of these genocide accusations, is proving intent. So what South Africa did was cited a handful of Israeli officials, and we're going to run through 4 of those here. They quoted Defense Minister Gallant, who said, quote, "I have ordered a complete siege on the Gaza Strip. There will be no electricity, no food, no fuel. Everything is closed. We are fighting human animals, and we are acting accordingly." They quoted the coordinator of government activities in the territories, saying, quote, "Human animals must be treated as such. There will be no electricity and no water in Gaza. There will only be destruction. You wanted hell, you will get hell." They quoted the Speaker of the Knesset, Nissim Vaturi, saying, quote, "Erasing the Gaza Strip from the face of the earth." And then they quoted President Herzog saying, quote, "It is an entire nation out there that is responsible. It is not true, this rhetoric around civilians not being aware, not involved. It's absolutely not true. They could have risen up. They could have fought against that evil regime which took over Gaza in a coup d'etat." Then turning to operations on the ground, where the majority of the focus for the Israeli Defense Forces right now is in the southern portion of Gaza and in around Khan Yunis. Overnight, Israel says that they exposed a vast underground tunnel network in and around civilian infrastructure in Khan Yunis. They say their commando unit and engineering units excavated this massive underground system, which is just kind of what we see every day now. Every day there's new videos, and I'll play the one here, of more and more tunnels being uncovered all across the Gaza Strip. Not really a surprise. What's notable here is that they say that millions of shekels were estimated to have been invested in excavating this tunnel and equipping it with air ventilation systems, electrical supply, and plumbing. They say after investigating the tunnel, it can be confirmed that Israeli hostages had been held in this specific location. Again, I don't know what the piece of evidence is that they used to determine that. They didn't show that or release that publicly, but it's not surprising at all. The hostages that have been released, I think every single one of them at this point that has made public statements has talked about being held in the tunnels. We know that's where likely all of the remaining hostages are. So again, not unreasonable that as Israel continues to push further into Gaza and clear some of these tunnel networks, that they're finding areas that at some point in the past few months held those Israeli hostages. Then shifting over to the Hamas side, Hamas claimed responsibility for at least 11 attacks against Israeli forces over the course of the past 24 hours. They say they detonated a house-borne IED, a booby trap of a house, with Israeli soldiers inside. They say they triggered another booby trap at the entrance to a tunnel network, fired mortars at Israeli positions, and engaged multiple vehicles with tandem charge RPGs. So again, we're seeing why the clearance operation above and below ground is going to take so long, and it's far from complete, really. I mean, when looking just at the underground networks here, you've got a handful of concerns. One is that they're booby-trapped, and as soon as Israeli forces move into the tunnel, it's detonated, collapsing in on those forces. We've already seen that a couple times. Hamas says that they did it again in these past 24 hours. So Israeli forces moving into the tunnels have to be on a constant lookout for any sort of booby traps. The second is that there might be Hamas fighters inside of those tunnels, ready to open fire as soon as the IDF turns a corner. And of course, the last one on everyone's mind is the hostages. Again, Israel says that earlier today they uncovered a tunnel where hostages had been held. We know hostages are likely being held in tunnels all across Gaza. So as Israeli forces uncover these entrances and try to move into these underground networks, that's all of the things they have to contend with. It's a real challenge, difficult for any military around the world to try to navigate. Then overnight, we got news that Iran seized an oil tanker in the Gulf of Yemen. Great news for international shipping that is just on the up and up recently. So Iranian media said, quote, "The violating oil tanker, Suez Rajan, stole Iranian oil by leading it to the Americans and delivering it to the Americans. It said Iran's Navy, rather than their Revolutionary Guard Corps, conducted the seizure. Usually it's been their IRGC in the past. The British military's United Kingdom Maritime Trade Operations, which provides warnings to sailors and ships in the Middle East, said they received a distress call from the security manager of the ship, who said that men wearing black military-style uniforms with black masks had boarded and eventually seized the ship. They then lost contact shortly thereafter with anyone on the vessel. According to international records, public records, that tanker had been off the coast of Basra, Iraq, loading crude oil that was eventually bound for refinement in Turkey. So we've got the Iranians seizing oil tankers in the Gulf of Oman, and the Houthis aren't slowing down at all in the Red Sea. Their leader, Abdul Malik al-Houthi, gave a speech yesterday where he said, quote, "Any American aggression will never remain unanswered. The response to any American attack will not only be at the level of the operation that was recently carried out with more than 24 drones and several missiles, but it will be greater than that." Just a couple days ago, I think the number I saw was 21. It's possible they fired some that didn't make it all the way to the point where U.S. and U.K. ships actually had to intercept them. But a large batch of drones and missiles fired at U.S. military vessels. That's what he's talking about. And still no U.S. response to that, by the way, that I've seen. They continue by saying there's no problem for the Europeans, China, and the whole world to pass through the Red Sea. The only and exclusive target are ships linked to Israel. And an interesting aspect here is one of the things the Houthis are pointing to is the Genocide Convention, with the aspect that says the states have an obligation to intervene if they think a genocide is occurring. This all goes back to World War II and the Holocaust, the idea of never again. Like, step in. If you think it's happening, step in and do something. And the Houthis are pointing to that, saying we are. We think a genocide is happening in Gaza. We're stepping in to do anything we can to prevent this from continuing. You know, in that light, it's interesting then that the United Nations Security Council just yesterday passed a resolution condemning, they said, quote, "in the strongest terms, the multiple attacks by Houthi rebels off the coast of Yemen, which have disrupted global trade and raised fears of further spillover from the war in Gaza." But there doesn't really appear to be any backing down by the Houthis. I mean, we have seen some of these militia groups in Iraq and Syria, some of them not really taking part in attacking U.S. forces, deciding for the most part to kind of sit this one out. Not the Houthis. They have ramped up attacks, and there's no sign that they're going to stop anytime soon. Continuing their statement, they say, quote, "We are ready to do what is necessary, and we will fight with all boldness because we depend on God in our position regarding the aggression against the Palestinian people. We are more determined to continue the path and to target ships linked to Israel, and we will not back down from that, and our position is faith-based." So when you look across the so-called axis of resistance here, you've got Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, the Houthis, and then the various militias across Iraq and Syria. The only group in there that is kind of continuing to stand by Hamas in every way that they can are the Houthis, right? If you're Hamas and you're looking out at these people that you thought, these groups, these entities that you thought would come to your rescue when Israel moved into the Gaza Strip, I got to think Hamas has been let down by Hezbollah. They've probably been let down by Iran. They've probably been let down by the militias across Iraq and Syria that are just kind of occasionally launching attacks against American forces. The Houthis are just continuing, ramping up strikes against anything in the Red Sea. So last week, 2 journalists were killed in an Israeli airstrike in Gaza, and it is now being reported that those 2 were both members of militant organizations. So Hamza al-Dadou and Mustafa Thuria were reported killed in the Israeli strike. Dadou had a significant public presence across social media and was the son of the Gaza bureau chief for Al Jazeera, who's lost multiple family members since this war began. Again, this is one of those things where it would just be great if we had an independent third party on the ground able to vet the information coming out from the 2 sides. So Al Jazeera, in the initial reporting here, said that these 2 journalists were targeted essentially for being journalists. The IDF then came out and said that there also happened to be a Hamas drone operator in the vehicle who had recently conducted operations against Israeli forces. The IDF has since put out information saying that Mustafa Thuria was identified in a document found by IDF troops in Gaza, showing that he was a member of Hamas's Gaza City Brigade, serving as a squad deputy commander, assistant squad leader kind of thing. And then additional documentation recovered by the IDF showed that Hamza al-Dadou was a deputy commander in the Palestinian Islamic Jihad Zaytun Battalion's rocket array. Again, both of these are via documents provided by the IDF. So again, what we have here are contradictory claims from the 2 sides that are difficult, if not impossible, for those of us on the outside to definitively prove one way or the other. It's just wanted to provide an update because it's been a pretty hotly contested story as of late. But that's all I got for now. Of course, if interested in national security subjects, be sure to check out the sit reps I put out on Substack. Link is in the description below. Substack now also has ad-free, sponsor-free videos that go live about 1 hour before they're up on YouTube. But thanks for watching. I'll see y'all next time.